Got it.
Okay. Hello, this is my friend Wynona from New Jersey, and today we'll be talking about forgiveness. And that's Rocky. He's in his bird cage. He also will be part of the conversation. And the first reading that I chose is Forgiveness and the Unforgivable by Trudy Govier. And basically, what she talks about is that no one is absolutely forgivable, meaning anyone can be redeemed, but we might not we might be withholding forgiveness if we don't think that they're adequate to be forgiven. Now, the first thing that I did want to hit with you is first thing I want to say is something that I highlighted in my reading is when a victim forgives a wrongdoer, this does not mean that she excuses him for what he did, ceases to blame him or hold him responsible for it, or condones the deed, rationalizing that it was somehow not wrong after all. To forgive is not to renounce the moral judgment that an action is wrong because it is only wrong actions that need to be forgiven. Nor is forgiving the same as excusing or condoning. When we forgive, we assume that there is something to forgive, a wrong action for which the offender was responsible. So, what do you believe on forgiving and forgetting? Like, how do you feel about forgiving and forgetting, Wynona?
Okay. So what you read was really interesting. Like, I guess when we forgive, sometimes it's hard because it feels like you're like giving somebody a pass, but we're not actually giving someone a pass. I think when you forgive someone, you feel like, I guess, like they learned a lesson, or they're not that they learned a lesson, but I think you feel like they changed or they won't do that again, whatever they did. And so that's what I think like, about forgiveness in that aspect. Like, I guess, I guess like everyone is forgivable, depends on the person. Like it's such a big question.
Right.
Yeah. It's a big question.
Wherever you want to take it.
But personally, forgetting is something that like I have a hard time forgetting things. Well, when it comes to like, I guess it's like a survival instinct it's hard to forget something, so you don't want to get hurt again in that way. It's like it's a subconscious. It's like, well, even if you want to like forget, it's like always in the background somewhere. But forgiving, yeah, I mean, I don't think everyone has to, like, I think it's up to the person. I feel like that whole thing of like, oh, like forgiveness, like you should always forgive. I'm not sure if you have to. Like, I don't think you always have to forgive someone. Sometimes it's done, for certain people.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's true. And like Govier also talks about deeds forgiven need not be forgotten. When we forgive, we may still remember wrongs that were done, and we are certainly likely to remember them if the wrongs were serious. So this is, I don't know if you remember when we were talking about Nelson Mandela and Dr. Martin Luther King. And you were like, yeah, because I was like, Dr. Martin Luther King was very idealistic, and he was very like, yeah, love your brothers and sisters. And but Nelson Mandela was like, no, don't forget.
Oh, yeah, I was on Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Malcolm X is like the opposite. Like
Malcolm X, yeah. And then here it talks about it is hardly plausible to think that Nelson Mandela forgot his 27 years in prison. When he forgave the white South Africans whose apartheid regime had put him there. To forgive is not to forget the wrongs we have suffered, but rather to regard their perpetrators and wrongs themselves in the moral light of acceptance and compassion, rather than in the glare of resentment and hatred. So basically, if you forgive, you do it for yourself or for what what sparks you to forgive?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Like, I think forgiveness is really like compassion for that other person. It's like I still like love this person. I still want this relationship. I still care about them. Like, I think that they can change. Um, and even if you don't know the person, I think it still is. There's like this. I know I told you the story about how like I just said this one day to my coworker about because we talk about me and you personally have talked about like how we're all connected.
Mhm.
So it's like when we forgive others, we forgive ourselves. So it's like if I see this thing as being forgivable in someone else, I should be able to see it as something forgivable for me too. It's like if I can't imagine if I do something that terrible, like if someone does something terrible that I can't imagine doing, then it's harder to forgive that. But if it's something I could relate to, something I could understand, then it's more easy to forgive that person for me.
So you saying that actually gave me a question like, do you think it's important first and foremost to forgive yourself for past transgressions that have happened in your life, or something that you've done and you thought you were right the whole time, and then all of a sudden you realize that you were wrong, and now you have to forgive yourself to continue the learning experience that you have with yourself, right? Do you think it's important to forgive yourself first and then extend that courtesy to others outside of you?
I think like that's a good question. I don't think it has to happen like I don't think it has to be an order of like I forgive and that person like I forgive myself and I forgive that person. Sometimes actually um I find that when I forgive someone else, I realize it's something that I need to forgive myself for too as well.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's great. Okay. Um, so going back to, why do you think we should forgive?
I could think we should forgive because like we're not always like none of us are always perfect, you know. None of us are always gonna do everything right 100% of the time. And so like when we forgive other people, it's like we're allowing people to be vulnerable and to be themselves. But if we're all like super strict and we're like, no, 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 like this can never happen, like then everyone's gonna be on like eggshells. Like we'll just never open up. We'll just be closed. But when you're just like, yeah, like we're just kind of more free flowing and we're a little bit more um bendable and accepting, you know, it's about like accepting other people and I think forgiveness is about that. Like none of us are gonna be 100% our best selves all the time. We're gonna make mistakes. So I think when we do forgive people, like we're opening up to each other, we're connecting.
Good. So going off of that, I have a part of a reading that I highlighted, and that's it goes back to like wait one going back on Govier's like Govier's writing. She writes, a victim must work through her own feelings and also examine her values in order to determine whether and how she wants to redefine her personal relationship with the wrongdoer and whether she wants to seek restitution or compensation.
Then just very it's getting to legal matters, I guess.
Well, like even if it's restitution of knowing that, yes, I'm a person that was wrong, then I do need to like have them, or I do need to forgive them so that I can go back to who I was before the incident happened. But going back to being that person that I was before the incident won't really be possible. It'll just be with an experience, unsavory at that. But she also says she should try to forgive, but with a full sense of her own restored self-respect, a clear understanding that she was wronged, and a powerful conviction of her own status and needs. I think that's very powerful. I don't know. she talks of Govier talks about Holmgren, which is another of our writers, like from our emotions. Um, she wrote about forgiveness too. And to Holmgren, she wrote that forgiveness is always morally appropriate as long as the victim has processed self-respect, regardless of the wrongdoer's attitude. So even if the wrongdoer has a bad attitude, and that just goes back to like self-respect and like the respect for a person theory that Holmgren talks about. And right. And I think it's also important in that light to forgive, even if the person that you're forgiving isn't really sorry.
Oh, okay, so that's where you're going with, like, if the
Yeah.
person you're forgiving really, yeah, I can kind of see that.
Yeah. So
Yeah, so you're going back to like how forgiveness is really for yourself. It's not for the other person ultimately.
ultimately, okay, cool. I think, let's see, what else? Now we can talk about Noel Chef.
I think it's cool what you're talking about. The last person was about how like that person needs to really be like in their power when they forgive somebody versus like they can't just be this like somebody just being like, yeah, sure, like I forgive you, like even when they're like in a victim mentality. Um, because a lot of people do forgive people maybe out of like just as sometimes people do it out of like defense mechanism, or people can do it um, just so they can get over something, and be like, yeah, I forgive you, even though they're not actually okay.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like you're like, yeah, sure, like I forgive you, even though you're like, I don't really like,
I don't care.
yeah,
Well, those are people that aren't really like dealing with what they're feeling, right?
yeah.
So, I mean,
So I guess like you're saying that that quote was like that seems like a more true form, like a true form of forgiveness.
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah, forgiving yourself, because like in class we talked a lot about like girls or women that were in situations where they were sexually assaulted, and I was just like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
I always like, didn't really like, those are situations that can happen. Like, how does a woman forgive a man when she has been sexually assaulted? And do you put yourself in the shoes of like, or should I put myself in the shoes of like, she was wearing revealing clothing, she asked for it? No, like nobody asks for it.
Yeah.
She dresses like that because she's confident with herself, and you know.
Yeah. It's like the whole thing of like, if you saw a businessman in a suit, like, would you just rob him because he wore like nice clothes?
Okay,
And he was asking for you to take his money.
like nobody asks for these things. Like it happens, maybe premeditated, maybe not, but it's always a different case. It's like a case by case scenario that you should take it apart as, I feel like. But anyways, for the next reading, Noel Sheth, she writes on the distinctive character of Buddhist forgiveness and reconciliation.
Ooh, I like Buddhist teachings.
I know. So she says that in order to reduce anger and hatred, we ought to forgive. Very important. So forgiveness is an act of empowerment or reclaimed agency versus something owed, something that we give to ourselves, like we were saying with the Govier piece. Forgiveness is relational, and forgiveness is a virtue versus obligation. Okay. In Buddhism, forgiveness forms part of the Buddhist virtue of forbearance. Forbearance consists mainly in absence of anger, hate, and malice, and the forgiving of offenses by others. This is all what's included in what is called forgiveness. Forbearance also includes the patient endurance of adversity, hardship, pain, and suffering. So ideally, forgiveness is absolute, complete, and universal. So one must forgive all types of offenses, inquiry, insult, abuse, criticism, everywhere, in private and in public, in thought, in word and deed, without any exception. And however wicked the offending person or however terrible the injury may be, even if the people criticize the injury, or even if people criticize his religion or order, one should not be angry or bear ill will towards them, but merely point out what is wrong. So this sounds like very rigid and like very like, yeah, we should forgive everything. We should forgive everyone, for every wrong that we encounter. Because what might be wrong for me may not be wrong for you, right?
Mhm.
So like, what do you think about this whole Buddhist belief about forgiveness, or this little piece that I read to you?
I think it's like another form of enlightenment for sure. Like it's like, well, we all can't be on a mountain, you know. Like as much as we all want to be like, I mean, we can, I guess, in meditation, but we all. It's like definitely there's levels to getting to that state. You know, like I can't expect everyone to adopt this mindset.
Right, right.
But I guess for us to try to, I think it's admirable to try to adopt that. Like realizing that what everyone does is not about us, it's about them. That one's a tough one. It's like, you know,
Yeah.
like someone hurts you or cheats on you, like it's hard to not take that personally. But like, it really is like, if you go back to them, it's probably about some insecurities or just something that they're going through that they do this act. But it takes a lot of self-reflection to get to that point that you can just be like, oh, that's cool. You totally hurt my feelings. But yeah, it's never about anybody else, right? It's about us.
Going off of that, I highlighted something off my reading is our real enemies are not outside of us, but inside us. For example, arrogance, wrath, and envy, and we have to wage a war against these internal foes. World peace cannot be achieved without realizing that we are all sisters and brothers, without cultivating kindness and compassion. But this is not possible without inner transformation. What do you think about that?
That's true. It's all about like about that internal transformation that you have to do. But so much of it, right? Like you said before, is that everybody's different. What we see, like we might not like somebody, like I might not like that what that person does, but that might just be me. You know, it's more than likely it is me. It's me that's like, oh, I don't like that, but it's something that I wouldn't like in myself. So I'm like, we all react a certain way to certain things.
Right.
Like you said about the rape, there's some people that have been raped or assaulted that don't feel like they feel okay. Like they don't feel like their lives have been ruined. And so it's interesting how we all process things so differently.
Do you think that goes back to like the person's their value of their own self-respect?
Yeah, I mean, it could go either way. It's either some kind of deep trauma that, or it could be that they just felt like they're totally separate from what happened, you know, and they do have like that deep self-respect, and they're like, well, you know, that happened, that was on them, but I'm still valuable, so it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
So it's yeah, very
It's like
different.
different for everyone, yeah. But I really like this part of the reading because it just opened my eyes. Like, it was like, okay, I didn't know that this is what Buddhists thought about forgiveness. And then when I read it, I was like, oh, this is what I think. I think like I need to go through an inner transformation first with myself. I need to know myself well enough to be like, all right, Alka, you did all these things. And I forgive myself for it. Because when I did them because I'm young, because my crazy mind, or just because I was where I was in that life internally, in that part of my life. Like, I didn't know what I know now. And you know what? All right, we know better for next time. And by we're, I mean, I'm talking to myself, like me, myself, and I, like we'll know better for next time. So I feel like it's important to have that self-respect and that self-love before for you to forgive yourself, for you to, again, extend that courtesy to your brothers and sisters, because we're all in this world together. So I feel like people are very important, to me at least.
Yeah, people are. And like we're like all each other in a way. So one of those, the forgiveness thing has been a big thing for me for a while now, specifically the past month. And it is like that whole thing about like forgiving that whatever has been done and just being like, well, I can change, like whatever you did, like it's the specifically for forgiveness within ourselves. It's like about, we can make different decisions, right? Like we don't have, like, yeah, we were that person before, but we don't have to be that person anymore. Like we can change, like, and everyone can change.
Yeah. Let's see. I think so. The final conclusion from my writing says that there's similarities between forgiveness and reconciliation in Christianity and Buddhism, but there are many distinctions. And these differences are found not only with the regard to presuppositions, but also in reference to the motivation, as well as the expression of forgiveness and reconciliation. So while there are many differences, I like to think of them as like there's not distinctions. And I feel like I feel like both religions are very similar. Even though I feel like Buddhism is more of a way of life, not really a religion. But I appreciate the thoughts on these writings. And how do you feel?
I like this talk. It's really good. I think your religion, I guess it could be a way of life for some people, but I guess not for me personally. But I just tend to like Buddhism because it's way more, it just seems way more open-minded. I think with religion, it can be too structured sometimes. Like it can be very like wall. It can be rigid. Like some of them have rules, and like we said, like there's so many scenarios. Like how could there be like this is the rule when there's so many different circumstances?
Yeah, because then that when you're like, according to Christianity or according to this Christian rule, it's like I agree. And I mean, we've talked a lot about religion and just where we stood with it.
It just causes more shame, anxiety, and guilt. It's like no wonder we're all having a hard time forgiving ourselves.
Yeah. That's great. Yes. Thank you so much for coming to that talk. But that's great. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That was really nice. I have stuff I can journal about now too.
Yay. Any other, I think that was your closing remark, but any other closing things?
No, I think we had a good conversation.
Yeah.
I like the one thing I really like that came out of this is forgiveness is an act of acceptance and empowerment. I think the fact that you said that the quote was like about empowerment, I think it takes away the feeling, because sometimes forgiveness sounds like it's weak, like a weakness. But like when you say like it's an empowerment, and like empowers us, is it makes it sound more like something that's positive, like something we should do.
It is very empowering, because once you forgive yourself or once you forgive someone, it just strengthens your relationship, right? Because like, remember that one time when we were out, or we were in CrossFit, and I stepped on your feet, and I was just like, you went back to me, you came back to me, and you're like, why did you do this? And I was like, I didn't know. I was just trying to make stuff happen because I'm leaving in a few days. And
I know. And I actually do feel that way. Like, yeah, after we've had a few run-ins together, but like, I do feel like when we do talk, and after realizing that we can talk,
yeah,
that I do feel like it makes our relationship way stronger.
it does, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
forgiveness is important, ladies and gentlemen. It does, because it gives you it gives you it gives you that window of opportunity to see how this person reacts. And I'm not saying that I did that because I wanted to see how you would react. I'm saying that it gives you a different look at my friend, which is you. And I just saw you in a different light, and I was like, oh, okay, this is what happens when I mess up, and it's like, okay, so I need to go back into myself and be like, how it said that the real enemy is inside of us, which is arrogance and ignorance and just all these things. And it's like, you have to think about what you're talking about when you're saying things. So
Yeah, I know.
it is empowering to
Yes.
be able to go back, and it strengthens relationships, and it strengthens your relationship with yourself. And
I definitely think it's like, yeah, you're being vulnerable. I think it's really, yeah, when the more I talk about it, like it is really courageous and brave. And yeah, because what's more scary than being vulnerable? And yeah,
yeah.
it's great. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
All about forgiveness.
The song, sing the song, sing the song.
I don't know the words.
And it's more than saying sorry. To forgive is divine. And then that's where I'll stop it.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for
All right,
coming
thank
to
you.
talk, and I will talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.